I think the spectacle of it is still going to be there. The spectacle is going to be the most interesting part about this whole thing. And again, I'm curious to see who's on the card. Welcome back, everyone. This is Bando's Breakdowns, episode 60. Bando's Breakdowns is presented by Playback. Thanks so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. Just wanted to go over a few quick reminders before we get started. Please be sure to listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts. It would be very much appreciated. If you are listening on the audio-only side, you can do so over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and so much more. Again, very much appreciated if you subscribed to the RSS feed for the show. That way you don't miss a single episode of the program. As you guys know, this is dropping on Friday afternoon, as it does every single week. So happy Friday to you all, for those of you who are listening to this episode hot off the, I guess you could say, digital airwaves, if you will, for the very first time. Of course, if you are watching on the video-only side, you are doing so at youtube.com/EDP Network. That is where all of the podcasts live for the network, including every single episode of this show, every single episode of Forever Power 5, which is going to be releasing a little bit later tonight, as well as all the other shows across the network, including a brand new episode of ETV Sports with myself and Nick Morganson. That dropped on Wednesday evening, so if you guys haven't checked out the newest edition, episode 288, you can go do so right now. Would be very much appreciated. We talked about a lot of stuff in the world of sports, everything ranging from sports media to NFL predictions and so much more. So again, it would greatly mean a lot if you went and checked that out, as well as all of the other content that we have across the network. One final reminder before we get started, please be sure to follow the show on social media at Bando's Breakdown. That's where all the clips from every single show of the podcast live, including on Instagram, which is where all the reels live, and of course TikTok as well. So it'd be greatly appreciated if you guys slap the follow over on all those. You can follow my personal at Zambando99 as it scrolls across the bottom of the screen there. All right, now that we have all of that stuff out of the way, it would be very much appreciated if you guys strapped in, because it is a big show this week with a lot of movement, a lot of different pieces, a lot of things to kind of dissect here as we move into the middle portion in the month of September. So let's get started. So, big breaking news off the top. Jake Paul, Tank Davis, has officially been moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Miami, Florida. It will still take place Friday, November 14th. This is big news. This is huge news. This exhibition fight was supposed to be in Atlanta. The Georgia State Commission was not a fan of the freak show aspect of the fight. Ahead of the commission called it, quote unquote, some of the dumbest shit he's ever seen in regards to these two competing against each other. So this fight is being moved. It was made official on Wednesday afternoon via a press release from Most Valuable Promotions. I have the press release. Let's take a look at it. It just dropped. It dropped the other day on Wednesday. So let's take a look here. Again, huge news. So of course, from MVP itself, they moved the press conference dates as well. So Monday, September 22nd in New York City is the first press conference for this event, or leading up to it. And then the other one is going to be down in Miami. So it's going to be a 2-day press tour. Fans can sign up for the pre-sale. That begins Tuesday, September 23rd at 10 a.m. Eastern. The press release does not say why the fight is being moved, but according to USA Today and several other sources, the fight is being moved for the reasons I just mentioned a second ago. Some interesting stuff here. Just kind of talking about the success of MVP this year, referencing the Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano rematch that took place earlier this summer. What else was there around this fight that was interesting to talk about? Okay, here are some quotes from Tank Davis and Jake Paul. Would be happy to read these to you as well. So here we go. New city, same mission, seek and destroy the tank. This is from Jake Paul. Kaseya Center, Friday, November 14th. I'm bringing the heat, and Miami will see me take down this angry elf while the world watches live on Netflix. I forgot to mention, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but another big blockbuster Netflix production will be the backdrop for this fight. Netflix to air this fight exclusively to all of its subscribers for no extra cost. Here is Tank Davis's quote. Jake Paul has been cherry picking in the sport of boxing for a while now, but he picked the wrong opponent this time, said Tank Davis. He better start losing some weight, chasing some chickens, and pray that helps him some on fight night. Thank you to Netflix for giving me the opportunity to whoop this clown. And then, according to Dana White's least favorite promoter, the Warlock, Nikisa Bidarian, MVP together with Netflix is bringing the most disruptive fight in the year of the year in Miami. I don't know about that. And we could not be more thrilled to showcase this blockbuster event at Kaseya Center on Friday, November 14th. Fans in Miami and tens of millions watching globally will witness two of boxing's most electrifying stars collide in a once-in-a-lifetime showdown. We're grateful to State Farm Arena. That's the original arena that was supposed to host the fight, and the GAEC, which is the Georgia Athletic Entertainment, probably commission or something, for their support in this process. Jake versus Tank is the culmination of 4 years of callouts and a brewing rivalry between Paul, the sport's most watched fighter, whose showmanship has redefined boxing promotion, and Davis, one of the most feared punchers in the world and widely recognized as the Mike Tyson of his generation. I don't know if I'd go that far, but he definitely is a budding superstar, to say the least. Not much of a huge reaction from this, other than the fact that the freak show goes on as planned. Very, very interesting stuff. I knew that this fight would still happen. Luke Thomas correctly predicted that Texas or Florida would pick up this fight, and sure enough, Florida was the winner there. Friday, November 14th. Huge controversy all around. Should this fight be happening? Should it not? More details to come on that as they develop. But again, huge news. Jake Paul, Tank Davis, still on November 14th. Only this time it's down in Miami instead of in the ATL. Let's move on and talk about some college football here. Let's talk about the biggest college football week 3 takeaways. There were a lot of them. Illinois remains at number 9 in the nation after a 38-0 shutout winning against Western Michigan. We'll get more into that game in just a second. But wanted to lead off with that, just considering that the Big Ten remains a huge player in the college football playoff. Way too early discussion with Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Illinois, and now USC cracking. USC and Michigan, they're now part of the top 25. USC being the newest addition there. It's a great conference. It really is. I mean, I think a lot of people have given the Big Ten varying disrespect, if you will, over the last few years, despite winning 2 national titles in a row. And it's clear that this year the Big Ten is out to prove something. They're out to prove that it's the best conference in the sport. And I think just the pageantry of Ohio State being number 1, Oregon, being in that top 5 discussion. Illinois is obviously right there. Illinois having its best start rankings wise to a season in several decades now. I mean, you could not have asked for a better weekend in regards to the Big Ten. Kirk Ferentz becomes the all-time winningest Big Ten coach, surpassing Woody Hayes. Very, very impressive feat for him. Iowa, not the most flashy program, but Kirk Ferentz has been a mainstay there ever since 1999. If you didn't put any respect on Kirk Ferentz's name, you are doing so now. That is for sure. Michigan State off to a fast start. They have USC this week, 11 p.m. Eastern kickoff on Fox. That's a huge, huge game. Michigan State was able to beat Youngstown State at home this past weekend, so they're off to a nice start under Jonathan Smith. And then, of course, the biggest takeaway, and how could I forget, Deshaun Foster fired at UCLA, an 0-3 start. Maybe Nico is questioning whether or not he should have actually left Tennessee. But nonetheless, Solid weekend in the Big Ten. In the ACC, Clemson gets beat by Georgia Tech. And then, of course, the two huge storylines within the SEC, LSU knocking off Florida. Then, of course, Brian Kelly's exchange with that reporter, which has since been rectified. And then, of course, Vanderbilt upsetting South Carolina uh, um, down there in Columbia this past weekend in a massive, massive upset. And of course, Shane Beamer had another all-time meltdown, which was hilarious to see. So overall, the wildness, the unpredictability of college football is still present. It's rather obvious, and I think it was a very entertaining week. And it wasn't the greatest week for me predictions wise in regards to my spread picks on Bando's Blitz. We'll get into that later this week as we'll drop another Bando's Blitz later this week. In fact, it'll be tomorrow morning. So I'll get more into that tomorrow morning when that releases at 10 a.m. Eastern. But for now, though, this was a huge, huge week in college football. Lots of parity, lots of excitement. And let's get into this Illinois game here because Illinois was able to protect home field advantage, knock off Western Michigan in the first official game in the newly named Larry Geese Memorial Stadium. Illinois is now 1-0 under that new name, wins the game 38-0 behind a ferocious defensive effort. A great job by Luke Altmaier, very efficient throwing the football. Still is yet to throw an interception from my recollection. So Illinois could not be off to a better start. Again, number 9 in the country, protecting home field advantage and beating a Western Michigan team that it was supposed to beat. Western Michigan was 0-2, one of the worst offenses in college football. They did play pretty decently in the first half, but no points showed for it. Were stopped on the goal line near the end of the half, and then Illinois' defense took over once again in the second half. And of course, that rushing attack paid huge dividends in this one. So a big win for the Illini. Non-conference play is officially over. Let's get into the game that everybody's talking about. Illinois goes to Indiana this weekend, number 9 versus number 19 on NBC Saturday night in Bloomington. The winner of this game is more than likely still in the college football playoff conversation. The loser of this game will more than likely have work to do either by winning out or finishing the regular season 10-2. This is a huge game. It's the first time since 1950 that both teams are playing each other as ranked opponents. Let's see. Obviously, two huge comeback stories here. On one side, you've got Kirk Cinetti. He took his team to the college football playoff last year. Huge, huge turnaround after a very, very ugly season the year before and just an ugly 20-year stretch for Indiana, minus the 2020 season where they actually did pretty well under Michael Penix Jr. That was still when Tom Allen was the coach. And then, of course, you look over at the Illinois side, what Bret Bielema has been able to do ever since he was hired in 2021 has been nothing short of remarkable. In the last few years, you really got to see the growth of this Illinois program. Luke Altmaier has come into his own at quarterback. Recruiting couldn't be any better. The defense is unbelievable. They have a few potential first round or early second round NFL draft picks to look out for sure. Hank Beatty is emerging into one of the most exciting receivers and kick return threats in the nation. This has all the makings to be the best game of the entire weekend. And we'll get into a rant later on in the show about why I feel College Game Day made a mistake by not going to this game. But we're going to explain why this game wasn't picked. And it's for a very logical reason, in my opinion. I don't know this to be a fact, but based on connecting the dots, I think I can tell you why this game was not a major selection for a College Game Day. But this game could not be more exciting. In my way too early preseason predictions, I had Illinois losing this game, but I think with the way Illinois beat Duke, with the way they've been able to score points at will, and with the way the defense has played, I think Illinois can go into Bloomington and get a win. I think they're being highly, highly disrespected. I think it's really, really unfair. When you take a look at this Indiana team, they really haven't played anybody all that impressive. And I feel like Illinois has them outnumbered. I think they're a more well-coached team. I think they have a better quarterback. I think they're better defensively. And I just think overall this game has the makings of an instant classic. So give me Illinois to cover the spread. Last I saw it was 5.5 on several books, including DraftKings Sportsbook as well. So give me Illinois to cover the number. I think it's going to be somewhere between 34 to 31, 37 to 30, something like that. Another game where Illinois is gonna grind it out. Use their defense and run the ball to grind out their closest or its closest win of the season. So far, it's been all blowouts for the Illini. This is their first true test, and I think Indiana is a good team. I think they'll give Illinois problems. The one caveat I do see though is simply put, Bret Bielema is just a better coach than Cincinnati. And I think when it comes down to the trenches, I think Illinois' offensive line is much better than Indiana's. And I just think overall they just have more efficient weapons on offense. And I think overall special teams is significantly better. So far, David Alano, perfect on touchbacks this season for Illinois. Again, I think it's going to be final score. We're going to put it on the record right now. Final score Illinois 34, Indiana 31. I don't think it's going to be a last second field goal. I think it's going to be an Illinois defensive stand with about a minute to go to get to 4-0 on the year before a massive homecoming game one week from Saturday, one that I will be at, big noon kickoff, Illinois versus the USC Trojans. So that's one that is a can't miss for sure. Let's talk about Bret Bielema now a little bit. Let's go off the beaten path. Let's talk excuse me. Let's talk about Bret Bielema and his personal opinion on what he thinks has been some of the biggest changes in the world of college football recruiting. I think it was a very, very interesting discussion that Bret Bielema had earlier this week on Wake Up Barstool. It's a discussion that I think is worth covering, just considering that Bret Bielema has been in and around college recruiting for a very, very long time and has seen the ebbs and flows of everything. And I think he's been one of the best at really adapting to the current style of recruiting that we see now, especially with his unbelievable usage of the world of social media. I think if you follow Bret Bielema on social, you guys obviously know, um, you guys obviously know and recognize the way that he has been able to get his players to buy in overall. So let's take a listen and let's kind of unpack what we see from this. And what's interesting about this conversation is he really does make sure to go back and relay some of the things that he learned at the collegiate level. Um, at the collegiate level when he was in school versus kind of what these guys have to go through now. I think it's a very, very interesting feat. Let's um we- let's do this. So but before we do, I just want to make mention of this too. I think the way that he's been using the media to really correlate his narratives all year has been really interesting. You either love this guy or you hate him, and I think this soundbite example is another reason for it. So I can't wait to take a listen, and we will do so right now. Five, four, three, two. Okay, this is courtesy of Wake Up Barstool. Again, this is Bret Bielema on what he has seen in regards to changes within the college football recruiting landscape. So let's take a listen.
And Coach, you've spoken on it plenty, but I do want, there's kind of a new audience here, so I'd love for you to explain it to people. But so often you talk to coaches nowadays and you get sort of a underlying resentment of where the game has gone and how it's changed. And I feel like you've just really attacked this thing head on and you've been positive, and your roster retention has been really, really strong in a day and age where that's incredibly tough. What's the key to making guys want to stick around?
You know, T-Bob, so one of the great things that happened for me was when I transitioned from Arkansas. Well, they transitioned me, but that's another conversation. But like when that happened, you know, I joined Bill in New England, and it wasn't planned, wasn't anything that I had set out in mission. But to spend 2 years with him and then a year with the Giants, you really learned a lot about roster, right? And I learned in the NFL there's three basic assets, right? Like there's There's retention of your current roster. There's removal of your current roster to bring in, and then the acquisition phase, right? So one of the first things I did when I came here to Illinois is set up our environment very much like an NFL organization. In NFL, you know this, T-Bob, like you have pro scouts and you have college scouts. Well, here, college football had only had high school recruiting. Well, when I came here, I set up college scouting recruiting and high school recruiting. And we really, truly do it like an NFL organization. We run our roster, even though it's a 53-man roster in the NFL, we run it very similar to our 74-man roster here. I have 110 guys on our roster, but it's really about the 74-man travel roster that's very similar to the NFL. So that was a big one. And then really, I think, surround yourself with a staff, not only football staff. When I was a head coach at Wisconsin, I had one recruiting assistant. Her name was Sharon Betlock. She was a retired school teacher, and she was a rock star, right? But it was just me and her, and then Joe Rudolph, who ironically now is the O-line coach at Notre Dame. That was my recruiting staff. Now I have a recruiting staff of 8 to 10 people, got a bunch of minions, Army people that like just kind of go around and do a bunch of, assignment gathering, all kinds of little details. But my personnel recruiting staff is now as big as my staff, my football staff, and you got to have both to be successful to retain your roster.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a behind the curtain, if you will, look on how Bret Bielema has seen the world of recruiting change. So very, very interesting stuff there as well. Let's talk about the best week for college football games. There are a lot of them. Illinois, Indiana being one of them. There's some other ones too. There's some ones that I may be forgetting as well. But off the top of my head, some ones that stick out and some ones that I think are worth noting. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily pick them, but I can at least tell you how I feel about these. And I think it's something to just note. So here we go. So with that being said, obviously, as I just alluded to, Illinois, Indiana, you got USC, Michigan State, which I briefly previewed. Oregon hosts Oregon State. This is very early in the season for that game to be taking place. In the game, I thought College Game Day would go to Auburn versus Oklahoma. That's a huge game. That's on ABC. Michigan, Nebraska, that's on CBS. Huge game for Nebraska to break a huge losing skid against AP ranked opponents. Hasn't done so in a very, very long time. Purdue goes to Notre Dame as a betting underdog. They're 2-1. Purdue is a 25.5-point favorite against an 0-2 Notre Dame. First time since 1988 that an 0-2 team has cracked the top 25. South Carolina plays Missouri. Could this be a bounce back game for South Carolina, who is no longer ranked? Missouri is at number 23. What other ones? Florida and Miami. That's the College Game Day game. We'll get into that a little bit more. It'll be brief, but I think this was a mistake. And there are a couple others as well, too. So Vanderbilt, Georgia State, my bad, and a couple others. So just wanted to go over that as well. Let's discuss my mock AP poll. So I've been doing this now this is my second week doing it. All right, let's take a look here. AP poll. Here we go. Let's look at the fan poll that I had. Because fan polls kind of rock a little bit. I don't know. I was able to do this as well. I didn't do it for week 1, but I did it for week 2 and week 3. So let's take a look at week 3. Here is my poll. So a few bits of controversy here for this ballot. I got 25 points in week 3 here, so not the greatest week in terms of differences, but Ohio State would be my number 1 team. Then it would go Oregon. Then it would go LSU. Then it would go Penn State, Georgia, Miami, Ole Miss, Illinois at number 8, Florida State at number 9, A&M at 10, OU at 11, Georgia Tech at 12, Mississippi State at 13. I like the way they've been playing as of late. Iowa State at 14, Missouri at 15, Vanderbilt at 16, Alabama at 17, Michigan at 18, Indiana at 19, Auburn at 20, South Carolina at 21, Clemson. I know it's controversial, but I do have Clemson at number 22. I still think they're a brand name and a pretty good team. They've just slipped up a little bit. First few weeks, I got Nebraska, TCU, and USC to round it out. So there's my mock AP poll as well. All right, let's get into something else that I thought was very, very interesting. Mad Dog, meaning Chris Russo, went on ESPN First Take in recent days and ripped the start time of Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford. So let's talk about the context of this before we get into listening to the tape here. So here is the context of this. So obviously, as you may or may not know, I'm not sure if you guys know this or not, but I figured I would let you guys know that Canelo versus Crawford started extremely late on the East Coast. It was a 12:40 a.m. Eastern start, 11:40 Central Time as well. Again, it was interesting stuff. Crawford won the fight. We don't need to beat a dead horse. The big story is how late the fight started. It was an abnormal time. It's not usually this late. Again, super interesting stuff there, and just kind of goes to show you, just how disappointed some sports fans and pundits were about this whole thing, because it was a very highly anticipated fight. It was one of those fights that a lot of people were interested in, et cetera, as well as just overall the pageantry of the fight. And I think the build up to the fight, the Netflix angle of the fight, as well as just overall the I guess the unpredictability of the fight. The unpredictability of the fight was the most interesting part about it, because we didn't know what Canelo was going to show up. We didn't know what Crawford was going to show up. So anyway, let's listen into this. And as I get this ready, I want to make it known too that he doesn't normally, meaning Mad Dog, he doesn't normally talk about combat sports on First Take. So to even see combat sports get mentioned here was I think very, very hilarious. It was one of those things that I couldn't believe as we were getting more into it. And what was even more interesting about it was and what was even more interesting about this as well was the fact that Stephen A. Smith was just sitting there in the background, just completely and utterly laughing about this. I thought that was the funniest part of the whole thing. So let's take a listen again. This is courtesy of ESPN's First Take. Let's hear Chris Russo's all-time rant on Canelo versus Crawford, starting a little bit too late. So here we go.
Fight. He in Indiana, it was at a decent hour. When I wanted to watch Marvin Hagler and Tommy Hearns in '85 with Al Michaels and Al Bernstein, it was at a decent hour. All right? Yeah. Listen, Canelo, who was not exactly freaking Sugar Ray Robinson, by the way. Canelo and Crawford, who, let's be honest, all right, he's not Sugar Ray Leonard. When these two are going to fight on a Saturday night, and thank God he got food in the state. You see that? He got food like crazy. I love that too. But when you're going to freaking have a fight on Saturday night, you can't start it at 12:50 at night. I mean, my God almighty, that fight, then you walk into the ring into 12:30. I'm in bed. I've been watching Texas A&M and Notre Dame. I've been betting and watching LSU against Florida. I have watched the baseball. I want my bread and cookies at 11. Watch the fight go to bed. I was sleeping. I had golf the next day. I bailed out. I stunk in freaking Jordan. But I played golf the next day. I had to be fresh in my. I don't want to keep my wife awake. And you got to sit there and you're going to start that fight at 10 minutes to 1 in the morning on a Saturday night. And I heard the excuse was the preliminaries ran too long. Who cares about the preliminaries? I didn't buy the fight to see some guy got a shooter I've never heard of. I bought the fight for these two. That is a disgrace. That's embarrassing.
So there you go. There's not much more that really needs to be said on that. It's clear that he and millions of other people were extremely disappointed. So figured I would just throw that in. Before we continue on, though, with more sound bites, we're going to take a quick break and hear a quick message from our friends over at Playback. Again, and Bando's Breakdowns is presented by Playback. So stay tuned for a message from them right now, and we will get into the end of the show. So thanks again for sticking with us. Just wanted to give a quick timeout in the middle of the show to remind you guys that Bando's Breakdowns is presented by Playback. I teased it a little bit earlier that there was an announcement coming, and sure enough, without further ado, here we go. Presented by Playback, watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETV Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. And with that, we can get back to the show. All right, so thanks again to our friends over at Playback. Let's move on now. Dana White officially confirmed the UFC's White House plans on a recent edition of the Impulsive podcast with Logan Paul. I have the audio from it. Doesn't really do me too much justice to really discuss this because I do think that he does a good job of kind of taking care of that for me. So let's listen into what he had to say.
People talk shit about Conor.
Oh, here we go.
I mean, even people in other countries want to say, and the way that we're doing this thing, like let's say this is goofy, but this is the octagon, right? We're building this arch, almost like the St. Louis arch, like this, and the lighting grid will go above the octagon. So when we shoot this fight, right, this whole backdrop will be the White House. And then when the cameras move over and the fight's this way, it's all the Washington Monument, the monument on this side. Then there's a park that's sort of connected to the White House. And we'll have 85,000 people there with big screens. And we're going to do concerts. We're going to do UFC X there. We're going to take over D.C. the whole week.
Wow.
So that was what he had to say on the White House card. Again, not too much really to add other than what I kind of discussed last week. It's going to be taking place in June instead of the month of July, as the president has other dealings to get to as well on the 4th of July. And I think that's interesting to note because a lot of people were excited about the 4th of July spectacle. A part of this that wasn't included in this was the fact that as well that it will be live on CBS, so there will be no need to purchase the event, given that the Paramount deal is in place. And what's even more interesting is that I think the spectacle of it is still going to be there. The spectacle is going to be the most interesting part about this whole thing. And again, I'm curious to see who's on the card. And speaking of who's potentially going to be on the card, it appears Conor McGregor is extremely, extremely hell-bent on potentially making the White House fight his comeback. So let's take a listen to that as well. Also courtesy of Impulsive. So just something to bear in mind as well. A lot of engaging stuff in this episode, about an hour and 20 minutes or so. These were two of the major sound bites. So here we go.
People talk shit about Conor. I'm telling you, I've been in the fucking trenches with Conor. Conor is a guy that has fought injured. Conor is a guy that a fighter has fallen out, and we slid in a stylistically bad matchup for him. He doesn't care. He literally will fight anybody.
But does he care enough to actually make a fight right now? Like, is he actually? When's the last time he fought?
He and I have been talking nonstop, and he's like, "I'm dead serious. I want this. I'm training. I'm back in the pool. I'm doing all the shit." So we'll see. As we still got a long way to go. We still got a long way to go till February, till we start making this card.
So there's that as well. Again, February is the timetable for a potential comeback for the former UFC 2 division champion. Rounding out the show, Bears and the Lions. The Bears get trounced in Detroit, 52-21, dropped 0-2 on the season. Not really much to say here. Just an overall bad performance by the Bears overall. Detroit was just too overpowering. The rushing attack was unbelievable. The Bears secondary got torched. Jalen Johnson is going to be out for an extended period. Not looking good in Chicago overall for the Bears. I'm very, very concerned as a Bears fan how this season may turn out. It's still early. It's still mid-September here. But still, you got to think that the Bears would have wanted to at least be 1-1 going into their first home day game. And that home day game is against the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are 1-1. They rallied in overtime to knock off the Giants 40-37 in a huge, huge win there. Looked like a game Dallas was going to lose, but did not. I think, and this may sound crazy, but I think this is one of the games that the Bears could win. I think Dallas is too inconsistent. I just don't think they have the pieces that they did a couple years ago. I think they just ran into a Giants team that isn't very good and doesn't know how to close out games. And you could say the same thing about the Bears. I just think home field advantage is going to be a factor here. I think the Bears do enough to at least get their first win. It's an ugly win for the Bears, but I think the Bears win this game. I think it's going to be 24-21. I got to be optimistic here because the schedule only gets harder from here. I really like the Bears in this game. I just think Dallas overall is one of these teams that's playing in a rough division. They have a rough schedule coming up too, and this is one of those games where it's going to be a measuring stick to see which team is worse off by the end of the day on Sunday. And I think with the Bears being at home, it's going to really pay dividends moving forward. So just something to bear in mind there. I like the Bears to get their first win of the regular season. One thing that I saw just briefly here, the Masters coverage, at least the beginning of it, is expanding the Amazon Prime Video. More sports media rights are in the flesh here with this. Huge, huge news. So it's now going to be Amazon, ESPN, and CBS under one umbrella with the Masters. Huge, huge news. Seems like a lot of people are really upset about this, just considering that the Masters has always been a TV product and now they're moving to a streaming service. I don't really have an opinion on this because I have Amazon Prime Video. I will be able to watch the Masters in full without any issues with Amazon Prime Video. I just think it will take some getting used to. And then finally, Zinger, College Game Day, making a huge mistake by booking Miami versus Florida as its College Game Day game. But I am going to tell you this. They had very few options for College Game Day because what College Game Day is trying to do, they're trying to become the SEC culprit because now the SEC has full control of the ESPN ABC rights package. Therefore, they have few games that they can mass promote. And with that being said, very few options for ranked matchups. This is the one they chose in Miami versus UF. Couldn't they have gone with OU Auburn 100%? But a lot of people complaining it should have gone to Illinois, Indiana, et cetera, et cetera. Because of College Game Day's non-ties to the Big Ten anymore, they are going to prioritize the SEC more often. Unfortunately, I think they made a mistake by giving it to Miami UF, given UF's 1-2 start, and given that the game means less because of Florida's loss to South Florida a couple weeks ago. But again, it's the hand that ESPN was dealt, and this was the choice that they had to make. So it's something to remind them that I think overall, College Game Day, I'm kind of going to defend College Game Day here a little bit. It's doing the best it can with the games it has, and people are going to have to deal with it. No errors this week as per usual. So thanks again for bearing with me for a very, very clean show. Overall, it was a lot of fun stuff today, a lot of interesting topics that we went through and so much more. That's going to do it, though, for Bando's Breakdowns. Just a few quick reminders. Please be sure to follow the show across social media at Bando's Breakdown. And, of course, you can listen to the show wherever you get your podcasts. That would be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and so much more. And, of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention that if you are on the audio-only side, please be sure to go back over to the video-only side. That's youtube.com/EDP Network. Would be very much appreciated if you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, as well as we closed in a little over 1,000 subscribers just a couple of weeks ago. So for everybody here at ETB, my name is Zain Bando. This has been episode 60 of Bando's Breakdowns. I'll catch you guys next week, and thanks again for listening. I appreciate it.